Thank you for coming to, I think this is our third joint event between BCS Agile Specialist Group and the PMI UK Chapter Agile Forum. Those are both of them are a mouthful. As typical, we try to do is to have joint events and common topics of interest to our different groups. And it's the third one. We have another one coming on the 1st of December, again here. And in that one, we're going to be talking about Kanban and Kanban in the PMO. So how can we use different things? Normally we do introductions because it's me. I'm not doing an introduction, which is great. We're going to be talking about introducing or the challenges and opportunities of introducing agility to non-agile organizations. Okay. As a bit just to understand your backgrounds, how many of you work day in, day out in what you will call agile environments? Ooh, okay, that's great in terms of that. How many of you work in, or your work is influence or interfaces with teams or other people who are working in agile environments? A few more of you. Okay. How many of you are you're hearing the things about agile this, agile that in your organization, and you want to find out a little bit more about it? A few more. Who shouldn't be here and came for the food? Okay, all right, two. All right, okay, good. So my name is Jose Casal. Just a bit of background about me. I'm the chair of the BCS Agile Specialist Group. My background, I work as an Agile coach, an Agile trainer. Been doing it for a number of years, and I work as part of a company called Artinium. It's a partnership, and we tend to work in anything Agile or anything linked Kanban, so not specifically one method. So it might be Scrum, it might be Kanban, Agile project management. I was part of a team that created the BCS Agile Foundation Certificate. So I have experience of trying to create certification. And other things like, for example, innovation games. So that's me. These slides are going to be on SlideShare. They're already on SlideShare. I'll show you the link at the end. And they're going to be on video shortly. Okay, so that's me. In terms of my experience, the real challenges that we have about Agile most of the time is not doing Agile per se or not trying to understand Agile. It's more about how to make Agile work in our environment, particularly when our environments are not Agile. So how do we get this thing rolling? Not just rolling, how do we make it, how do we make it survivable? One thing that happens many times is that we try to do Agile or introduce agility, and 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, 2 years down the line, it's gone. Yeah? So if it's something that it's useful and important and valuable, how come it's so difficult to make it happen? How come it doesn't last? How come we tend to see things like one person disappears from the organization and the whole thing unravels? So things like that, okay? But I'm talking about introducing Agile in non-Agile organizations. What is an organization? Any suggestion? It's a bunch of loonies working together? As a definition that I will say, an organization will be a group of people that they organize themselves, and what they're trying to do is turn some sort of like ideas into some sort of like product. That could be something that gives us a benefit, could be reputation, could be, I don't know, promotion, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be, it's just some sort of value. So turning ideas into value, yeah? You hear many times about the idea of like turning ideas, concept to cash, loops, turning ideas into products. We use organizations to do that most of the time. So that's the basic definition of an organization. Have you heard of a guy called Peter Drucker? Yeah? Okay. Do you know what the Drucker challenge is? Okay. So Peter Drucker has done a challenge for us. And he started by saying, in the 20th century, has effectively, or was effectively, the century of manufacturing. And if we look at manufacturing from the early 20th century, when we started with the sort of like the Ford Model T production lines, and we look at how the century ended with very robotized manufacturing plants, almost with no people working there. That change was about a 50-fold increase in productivity or efficiency. So his challenge to us was that, can we achieve the same level of productivity increase in the knowledge industry during the 21st century? Okay? So can we achieve something that will be the equivalent of moving from the Model T phase to the end of a century roboticized plants? Yeah? We're in 2014, almost 2015, so we could say we are at the beginning of this. Probably we cannot even imagine what this increase will be. But I think that Agile and Lean and its future evolutions are probably the sort of processes, mindsets, philosophies, ways of addressing challenges that will get us there. Okay? I will talk about a little bit about that. Yeah? So, what's the baseline? Where are we today in the knowledge industry? My hypothesis in this will be that we are very much at what I call the Model T phase. We're still producing sort of like bloated, clunky products produced by very, or rather ineffective organizations, or inefficient organizations as well. Okay? So, as an industry, we are achieving a lot. Yeah? You know, for example, IT is a relatively young industry, and IT is rules the world, or rules business. Most organizations run on IT. But are we still as a Model T phase? Are we still doing clunky things? Could we do them better, more efficiently, more productive? We've got two pieces of information or data that might show us why I'm saying this. The first one will be, are you familiar with the Standish Group? Yeah? Standish Group is not an Agile group. By the way, I'm using the word Agile a few too many times. And the rule number one of an Agile transformation is do not talk about Agile. Talk about business improvement. There is no point, you know, it's not about doing Agile, it's about improving. Yeah? So, a Standish Group, this is from 2002. They produce, or they analyze about 2,000 projects, mostly in the Western world, and mostly projects that were considered to be successful. Yeah? But having looked at those projects, they looked at the features that were delivered in those projects. And what they found that was quite shocking in some ways is that 45% of those features successfully delivered were never used by the customer, by the end user. It's quite terrifying when you think about that. Another 19% were rarely used. And only about a third were always used, frequently used, or sometimes used. Okay? So, if you look about the blood and tears and effort that the people developing these products put, and the money and time and all those things, to have two-thirds of your features not used, it's quite shocking. Yeah? And you wonder, how come this sort of thing happens? Can we do things better? Can we produce products in ways where we can try to identify this useful side of a chart and try to identify as soon as possible the things that customers don't want to use and stop us from doing that? Yeah? Can we avoid these bloated products? As an example, if you think about, for example, the Microsoft Office suite, yeah? How much of it do we use? Probably about that much. How much do we pay? Probably that much. Yeah? Okay with that? Please feel free to ask questions and challenge me if I'm saying something that looks just wonky. The next one is the fact that we run very inefficient organizations. Okay? And if you look at the life cycle of projects or work, in turning them from some sort of like ideas into some sort of like delivery or live product. This is an example of a workflow. Don't take it as gospel, it's just an example. Tickets will go, or projects or features or whatever these tickets are, will go through different stages, some of which add value, contribute to generating the end product. Others are not adding value, will not be adding value. Things like a ticket waiting for someone to work on it is not adding value. The time is ticking, but there is no value. Waiting for an approval stage doesn't add value. Something that is finished but is not released doesn't add value. Yeah? So if you look at these sort of workflows, you will have what we call waiting steps, and some more of them which are like active valued steps. And in themselves, there might be wasteful activities like rework, like fixing defects, like correcting requirements that were not or misidentified or things like that. Okay? And all those things together add to the time it takes to turn the idea into a product. Yeah? So we have a concept called, this is coming from Kanban, we talked about flow efficiency. A flow efficiency will be the ratio between the time that we are actively working on this project or feature compared to the total time that it takes for that feature to be out there. Okay? Any guesses about what will be the typical standard measured efficiency level? Who thinks that we operate in about 100% efficiency? No one? Great. If you did, please tell me how to. Over 80% efficient? No one? Over 50% efficient? Okay, a couple of hands there. 30% efficient? More hands. 10% efficient? A few more hands. Less than 10? A couple of. Okay. When we measure this thing, and there is a couple of studies that have been done in the Kanban community, it tends to be 1 to 5%. This is the sort of work that it takes 150 days to be released. And when you analyze how long we've been working on it, there is only about 6 days of active working on it. The rest has been waiting for someone to pick it up, or it has been waiting in a queue, and so on and so on. When we actually look at, people are busy. People are probably just have a to-do list which is longer than we can do. Yeah? So this is not about utilization. This is about the efficiency of moving work through our organization. Yeah?
Questions now?
Yeah. No, go for it. Question.
So quick question about this slide and probably the previous one. The research was done, so those like 2/3 were not really kind of using the features. 1 to 5% efficiency. Was there any research done to understand the reason for that? Because I can argue that if 2/3 of the product are not in use, in Excel I can create a formula using a simple function, or I can create a more efficient formula using a function I never heard about. So that means lack of training. In the process, inefficiency may be down to people not really understanding the process or being too lazy, and so on and so on.
There are many reasons. I'll go through some of them in the next slide. Did you hear the question? Yeah. I'll give you some examples of why this happens. Yeah. Good. Yeah. But if you look at this thing, it's just the fact that we are often, or we are drowning in inefficiencies. We are drowning in waste. Okay. So not only sometimes we are producing the wrong. I mean, one of the typical mudas or wastes that we talk about is extra features that are not needed. That example that I gave you from the standards group is one of them. Other causes of waste and inefficiency is things like distance. And I define distance in many different ways. Distance can be geographical distance, time zones. It could be distance, like, for example, between different roles. Yeah? Management, no management. It could be the distance between I'm a developer, you're a tester. Yeah? It could be cultural distances, language distance. It could be a mindset distance. When we try to do Agile is a very different mindset than traditional ways of working. But a lot of the change is in our head. It's how we react to the world, to the challenges that we get at work. So all these things can create distance, misunderstandings, friction, things like that. Waiting is one of the biggest causes of delay. Handovers. I'm doing development, there you are, now you do the testing. Or I'm doing analysis, off you go. Yeah? So that's why, for example, in Agile, I keep talking about trying to create more collaborative, frequent contacts, feedback loops between the teams, and a lot more interaction. Task switching. Yeah? How many things are we trying to work on at the same time? Yeah? Task switching is a great cause of delay and waste. When we have one thing that we're working on, what percentage of our time can we focus on that thing? 100% of the time. If we have two things that we're working on, how much attention can we give to each one of them? Someone will say 50%. Actually, it's about 40%. So there is a it's a cost in switching between the two tasks, which is about 20% of our time or effort. Yeah? Three things. So it's now 20% of each and 40% delay, and it goes on and on. So when we're trying to work on 10 things, yeah, how much time can we dedicate to any of this? Very, very little. Yeah, I think we just effectively show an element of dizziness trying to work between things. Yeah, so again, trying to focus on work, trying to do fewer things but do them better with more focus is some things that we encourage and talk about. The other one is high utilization. Yeah? Utilization is the enemy of business flow, of business responsiveness. Okay? What happens, or do you get into organizations, do you hear things like, we are committing, trying to stretch goal, 110%? Yeah? Do you hear that in your businesses? Okay, let's do an analogy with a motorway. What happens when the motorway is 100% full? It's total gridlock, nothing moves. Yeah? What would be 110% in a motorway? It's a pile-up. Yeah, it's a pile-up. We run our organizations as pile-ups. Yeah? Motorways, for example, the decision to go from one lane to dual carriageways to 3 lanes to 4 lanes, most of the time is because of the volume that we try to do. But we try to have that motorway about 60% full at most times. That's when you can maintain your speed constantly without being affected too much by other traffic. 70–80%, you start getting traffic, you start getting the sort of like the accordion effects, concertina effects. 100% is a pile-up. Now, when we think about the work that we do, yeah, in our organizations, most of the management paradigm, especially when you're doing resource allocation on the spreadsheets, yeah, we're trying to get all these resources. By the way, people, not resources, people, yeah. We're trying to get them fully busy, yeah. And that leaves us no capacity to react to the unexpected, yeah. We are already full, so reacting to the unexpected means either dropping things that we have already promised or trying to do overtime, whichever way. By going to full of utilization, the only option is to disappoint our customers. Because either we're not going to do what we promised, or we're going to have to do overtime, we're going to get tired, we're going to start introducing errors, which means rework, which creates more negative loops. Okay? So some organizations are trying to do is to say, reserve some space. Yeah? Do you know the famous 20% time in Google, which doesn't happen anymore, by the way, apparently. Is trying to create space so that we can react to someone from Google here? Okay, just in case. You can tell me if it's like. Try to leave some space so that we can react to the unexpected. We know that something will happen, but we don't know is what will be. So can we create a space to react to these sort of things? Yeah? And the last one is defects. Defects are just terrible. Yeah? It's not only that we have put the effort and the time and our intellectual capacity to do things, we got it wrong, now we have to fix it. Yeah? Many times it's because we are so full, we're doing so many task switching activities, we have so many handovers, that there is no wonder we run on our organizations on defects. Yeah? Is that okay? Okay? So, with all that, what we need to many times think is about, go back to why we need to do things, why are these things happening in our organizations? And in the context of introducing Agile, it's not just the question of yeah, Agile looks fine, everybody else is doing it, or says that they're doing it. It's why should we do Agile? Yeah? And I believe that Agile and Lean are very well designed to tackle those things, to tackle the bloatiness in our products, to help us identify the real valuable product features and deliver those, to eliminate the causes of delay, to eliminate the waste and make us more efficient. Yeah? Lean and Agile as we know it today, in the future hopefully we get better at it. Yeah? Have you seen the Agile Manifesto values? You seen this before? Okay. Anybody hasn't seen it before? Okay. One thing that I haven't showed here is that one thing that the Agile Manifesto says is that we are uncovering better ways of working by doing it and helping others doing it. Yeah? So really, that first sentence is extremely powerful about the mindset that we're trying to do. We are uncovering things. Basically, we're saying we really don't know. Yeah? There will be future things that will be better. Yeah? We're covering better ways of working. Yeah? So better doesn't mean best. We will find new ways. We will find better ways. It's all about improving. Yeah? And we have to do it. It's not about talking about it. It's about doing it. Yeah? And then helping others do it. So with that intro, then we have the 4 values. There is 12 principles that we tend to forget, and they're just too long to do here. But we talk about there is value, or we value more the idea of people and their interactions, those individuals and interactions. We need processes and tools. Otherwise, it could be just a chaos or the Wild West. So processes and tools are not bad. They are needed. But we need to do those things in order to help us to enable our people, to enable our interactions, to allow us to work better, to be our best. Okay? The next one talks about documentation. Yeah, it's important. Yeah? But the real progress happens by doing working software or working products. Yeah? Having a whole stack of documentation and then the project finishes or gets cancelled, that documentation probably adds no value. Yeah? We measure progress by demonstrating what we do. Particularly because myth number 1 of business, our customers, ourselves, we really don't know what we want. Yeah? We pretend that we know what we want. When is the only time when we really know what we want? Either when we see it working or not see it working. It talks about empirical feedback loop. Yeah? Until then, we only have a hypothesis that we know what we want, and we only have a hypothesis that our customers will want this. Yeah? Validate it as soon as possible. Identify your third of useful features from the 2/3 of waste. Number 1, we pretend that we know what we know when we don't. It's just, so let's validate it as soon as possible. Myth number 2 is that we know how to estimate things. Human beings, we are rubbish at estimation. When do we know how long things are going to take us to? Once we've done it. Yeah? Until then, we are only guessing. Yeah? So, 2 pretenses that we have in our business. We don't know what we want, and even if we knew, we don't know how to estimate it for most of the time. So, let's stop basically telling porkies to one another. And the idea is, let's get to it. Validate our hypothesis. Let's validate what we need to do. Let's validate what the users want. Yeah? And let's do it as quickly and as efficiently as we can. Yeah? When we are operating at 1 to 5% efficiency, estimation is a really bad measure of how long things will take us. Why? when we're estimating, what are we estimating? What activities do we estimate? Remember the efficiency flow.
We do stuff, but we don't estimate gaps.
Exactly. When we're estimating, we are concentrating on the active part of it. We are estimating that we are going to do this analysis, and we're going to do this database development, and we're going to do this front end, and this back end, and we're going to test this and test that. But we don't estimate it's going to take me 3 weeks waiting here, and it's going to take me 4 weeks for an approval. That's not part of the estimation. If we are 1 to 5% efficiency, the big elephant in the room is the waste. Yeah? So trying to be better at estimation does not help us be better or more reliable in producing products. Yeah? The real waste and delay and problem is in the waste. So in some ways, identifying some of the waste and removing it will be a good solution. Yeah? So as an example, if we have lots of work finished and we are waiting we only release once every 3 months, yeah? That's finished work that is not released, is not getting any value. Could we release more frequently? Yeah? That sort of thinking process is what takes us towards continuous delivery. Yeah? If we have to do development and we waited for testing, and then we pick the testing some later on and there is defects, could we do something different, like continuous integration, test-driven development, things like that? So the things that we try to do in the Agile space many times are there to resolve or address the wastes that we see, the problems that we see. Yeah? But it's all about trying to get towards working products, working software, as soon as possible to get feedback.
So where in this is the requirement specification? Because you can't, you can't not have, how do the testers know what to test, or few people coming onto the project know what the logic of business rules like that have been?
Yeah. So the question is like where in all this is requirements and specification?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing with any sort of Agile things, we need to have requirements. Of course we do. We will document the requirements, but perhaps we start with a relatively high level set of requirements and try to identify the most valuable ones and try to start validating those ones. Because if the most valuable one feature that you think requirement that you thought of, you're trying to validate it with your customers, and the customers are saying, nah. Perhaps the rest of the hypothesis of this product is equally
But everybody's interpretation of a high-level requirement is different.
Absolutely.
And the business rule is not, in my opinion, a high-level requirement.
So one of the principles that we have, and probably comes into that customer collaboration, is one of the principles of Agile is about the business users and the technical people, the people that deliver the product, should have daily interactions, or at least as frequently as your environment allows. We talk about face-to-face communications, and all of that is about the emergence of the detail, the emergence of what the solution is. Because documenting the whole spec or all the requirements in the utmost detail still give us no validation against does the customer want it. So what we try to do is to keep evolving and developing it and getting feedback loops so that we learn. We identify the things that customers don't want, or the things we thought were right and they aren't, and keep improving the product continuously.
The last point I've got on that then is the people at your business or your stakeholders or whoever you're talking to forget that they've made certain decisions, key decisions, especially when it comes to doing their user acceptance, let alone, we've done all the system testing, etc. So if that's not captured somewhere, then you end up chasing your tail and...
It says over rather than no.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the myths in that, Agile, no documentation, doesn't say that, it says over. Yeah? She's talking about the capturing decisions made, so that in the future when we do like a UAT phase and so on, we'll pick it up. One of the things that we try to do is like, can we do UAT on a regular basis? So we go and say, Mr. Customer, what do you want? This. Spend a bit of time, and you go and say, here you are. That's what you asked me. Is this okay? Yes, great. What's next? Or, I told you this, but it doesn't work for me now. Can you do a little bit of a change? All right, do we do it next? Yeah, okay. So it's always like, what do you want? Here it is. Is that all right? Thumbs up? What do you want? Here it is. So you're doing that regular loop feedback loop, much shorter loop with your customer, so that we're both learning. Yeah, you're learning what the product is. We're learning to understand you. We're learning to deliver to you what you want, and we're creating this cycle of trust, a track record of delivery. We just try to engender success by working together.
Well, I get the small information
Yeah.
and getting that, but I don't
Yeah.
necessarily subscribe to not putting that information into a requirements.
It doesn't say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Just worth reiterating, this is not don't do that.
Yeah.
Just do what's
More
necessary.
more, yeah.
And what we need to do, I mean, great agile teams actually probably produce, I could say, as much information or documentation as the non-agile teams, but this information is built over time, regularly, so it's much more tuned up and it's much more aligned to what the actual needs are. When we do a lot of documentation early on, have you heard about THADware? It's when you get these specs about that big and it goes thud on the desk and stays there forever, and then you try to guess what the person was. So big specs that just are done to soon just become THADware. No one looks at them. So this documentation is a live document. It's a live thing, and it's part of our working product. Yeah, a product that has no documentation often is not a good enough product.
It'd be interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah, we can talk about, and then we start using different things like wikis and blah, blah. We can talk about this.
I was just going to say, for example, I know some of my technical people who work with me, they create an updated wiki all the time, so that at the end of the day you actually build up that building of documentation as you go, rather than the single piece, which is just what you were saying.
You start using different systems and different solutions to deliver this thing. Is that right? We talked about it a little bit. Contracts are important, but much more important is to create a collaborative environment. It's not the them and us, client, supplier. It's trying to say, hey, we're trying to deliver something in common and something good for us. Yeah? And the next one is, we need to do planning. Agile teams do a hell of a lot of planning. They might do planning every 2 weeks in time boxes. They might do release planning, project planning, whatever it is. But those plans are not fixed in stone. What we know, the one thing that is certain, is that things will change, that we will get things wrong, that we will discover and learn things. So what we try to create is plans that adapt to the circumstances, that will respond to change. One of the American generals, I don't know which one, talked about the importance is in the planning, not in the plan, and that no plan resists the contact with the enemy. Yeah? Well, no plan in knowledge work typically resists the contact with reality. It's great in our plan, but the moment we try to do it, we got something wrong. Estimation is wrong, we didn't know that this requirement, we forgot about this. It's just the reality of knowledge work. Yeah? So it's how do we harness the change to our own advantage.
So if you allow me just one interruption here in terms of the earlier point and contracts, how do you sell delivering work in small increments to the customer procurement?
That's one of the biggest challenges.
That's the biggest challenge we have right now, for example, one of them.
Yeah. Agile contracts and agile procurement can be one of the biggies, yeah? Because it's very difficult. I mean, we're talking about public sector when one of these big agile public sector examples, which will remain nameless, they were talking about we're doing agile, yeah? And the next thing they go and say, and we have just procured 2 billion worth of equipment, and the first release will happen in 2017. And you're like, what? What did I miss here? Yeah? But that's because sometimes the procurement cycles and the contract cycles in your organizations are difficult. Yeah? So one of the things about this agility in organizations is many times is understand the constraints and trying to work within the constraints and trying to move those constraints one step at a time. Yeah? GDS, Government Delivery Service, is a great success story within public sector. People 3 or 4 years ago would have said it's impossible to do agile in public sector. GDS is the proof that it can happen. It's taking a hell of a lot of time, and probably will take a lot of time. And it's going to have a lot of failures and a lot of successes. Yeah? But over time, things are changing. Yeah? We cannot just go and say, change. Because a lot of these things are very much about the way we think, the way we behave, the way we react to change. So, again, you will recognize that you are in a really agile organization if your HR function and your finance function and procurement really understand agile. When those three functions resemble something about agile, you know you won. That's far away for a lot of organizations. So where we are, how do we work within those constraints? Is that okay? We can talk about it. We could do a whole session on agile contracts and agile procurement.
I'm in public service, and so we have this problem.
Yes.
My problem is sort of slightly different. Not so much how do we negotiate a contract, but how do we persuade people that actually we've blocked out 6 months of time to deliver your project, and when they say, oh yes, but when's it going to be finished? And we're like, well,
6 months.
in 6 months.
Or before, probably.
And then they're like, but yeah, you're going to have all these features. And I said, well, that's not up to us, that's up to you. And that's when they start putting faces at us.
It's really difficult. If I went to you and say, please buy this product from me, trust me. How much trust do I get? Probably not that much, yeah? This sort of trust, sort of challenge many times is, how do we start creating the momentum? How do we start creating the belief? So there are books and approaches about how to introduce Agile. Some of them say, hey, pick a project that is big enough or important enough so people pay attention. Try to ring fence or isolate a team and try to create a little bit of an example so that we get the track record. Other people will say, in that organization, so there is no magic recipe. In some organizations, we do what we call a stealth agile. Somewhere in the organization, someone is doing agile, but it's not telling anybody. And then they're hoping that one day they go like, ta-da! Yeah? Other organizations go and say, we're going to go agile across the board. Yeah? Horses for courses is how you try to do. But the important thing is about, you need to understand your organization, understand the context, and see how much we can do. I'll talk about culture in a minute. Is that okay?
It's one thing that strikes me that I work in healthcare IT, and we've had international programs delivered in eons, geological time, but actually when you put changes into systems where you've got a lot of people who are using those tools for their daily work and they haven't got a lot of time to go on training or whatever, being really agile might be a problem because they're going to, it's not like somebody who uses a website twice a week or something and it changes and they go, oh, it's changed. It's really embedded in what they do, and I don't know that's the ways to...
So the problem is like the people are not supported in doing it.
If the change is too frequent, you will get confusion.
Changing in adopting Agile or changing
the functionality that they're seeing.
Yeah. So one thing, so you're saying that if the functionality changes a lot, it can be disturbing or creating a... the reality is that change will happen, but just uncontrolled change without any... That's not useful either. So we have to have a certain element of understanding what we're trying to do. If there is so much change that... if there was so much change that we cannot even plan or do anything like that, there are different ways of responding to it, but yeah. It's an element of like having the solid ground. One of the mudas, one of the ways is called motion. And motion could be that the requirements are just changing left, right, and center. So, yeah. Okay? Now, talking about all these agile things, one of the things that we can become very much about to align to certain methods, okay? So as we have this, I call this fundamentalist or any process fundamentalist, okay? It's the sort of thing that say, Agile is the answer to everything. It's not just Agile, it has to be Scrum, or it has to be Kanban, or it has to be, yeah? What we do has to be part of helping us become better. It's not a practice for the sake of practice, it's about enabling us to be better. Yeah? Otherwise, we are focusing too much on process rather than on people. Okay? So, as a way of why Agile delivers, we have seen that before the features, but there are other results from the Qatar Consortium. This is 2007, and they kind of like compare projects and organizations that have gone before Agile and after Agile. And what they saw is a reduction on cost, 61% cheaper, 24% faster, 83% fewer defects and 39% smaller teams. Okay? Now, this is creating a problem. Because when you say people, why do we go agile? They go, oh, because it's cheaper, faster, and, and better. Yeah? And what they're actually thinking is like, my developers are going to go twice as quickly in typing the keyboards and thinking. That's not what it says here. Yeah? It is cheaper and faster. But perhaps it's cheaper and faster because it's helping us focus on this green part. And we stop ourselves. What if we could run every project successfully and deliver only the functional, useful areas? How much time and money will we save? A lot. Yeah? What if we could focus on those ones and not be trying to do a million things at the same time? We would reduce defects massively. Yeah? And we wouldn't have to start hiring extra people all the time because we're running time and we're desperate to try to bring the project back, which doesn't work, by the way. Yeah? So this cheaper, faster, and fewer defects is not about the fact that that's what it is. It is about the fact that we are running better products, more aligned to the customers. We are running a more efficient ways of working. Okay? So, if we go back to what's an organization, yeah, traditionally, we set ourselves around, mostly for the IT perspective here, we have lots of things happening before, yeah, but once we got to IT, we try to usually organize ourselves in, do the requirements, do the analysis, do the design, development, testing, perhaps an element of supports and operations and so on. Do you recognize that sort of like sequence? Yeah? And this has allowed us to, with more or less glitches, to produce, to do this, turn these ideas into products successfully. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business. Yeah? So, for better or worse, we have been successful. Cool? So successful has this model been that we organize our organizations, we structure our organizations around this model. We have a team of requirements people. We have teams of BAs, teams of architects, teams of developers, teams of testers, and so on. Yeah? We model our organization to reflect this traditional sort of like, sequence process. Yeah? Now someone comes and says, hey, let's go agile. Where does normally, if you were to pick one area in that traditional flow where agile starts, where would you think it usually starts?
Experience is in debt, but that's a nightmare.
Okay. Yeah. Typically, the Agile Manifesto talks about software development. It typically has started in some sort of development, maybe it's developers and testers, or whatever, yeah? But typically, let's assume as an example that the developers go and say, like, it would be great to do Agile, yeah? The effect of that, of making this team Agile, or trying to do Agile, is that the flow of trying to turn ideas into products is somehow disrupted, the force is disrupted, yeah? And suddenly we have a bunch of people, which could include some of these other functions, that go and say, we don't value documentation. We want to do documentation in a different ways. Reports? We don't do reports. We don't like projects. We don't like this. We do things in a different way. Is that distance I was talking about? Distance in the practices, distance in the mindset. They will be here saying, like, please give us all the, work with us all the time in giving us the requirements all the time. And people are saying, like, I don't have time to do this. Or my only way of doing it is to give you the whole thing. And down there, perhaps, you get these testers that are saying, we're still doing manual testing, and it takes us 6 weeks. And you are like, every 2 weeks, start again. And you are like, it takes me 6 weeks. I don't care, start it again. Yeah? So effectively what we are doing is, if we are not careful, we can be creating a massive chasm between people that are trying to do Agile and people that are not doing Agile. Yeah? Creating friction. Okay? And in that sense, it's a lot of change that we try to do. The bigger the change, the more difficult it is. Yeah? Have you seen the J curve before? This happens when we are learning, this sort of curve of change or things like that. Why do we change? Effectively, what we're trying to do is to say, this is our current state, And we're trying to get a new desired state which is better. But is that change instant? Do we get an improvement instantly? Typically we don't. We have to learn. As an example, if I've always been kicking the ball, football, with the right foot, if I wanted to become left-footed, it will take me a lot of time to be as good as. Yeah? So what tends to happen is that things don't go better and not really go worse. If the change is quite big, they go very much worse, significantly worse. Yeah? And it takes time before we start seeing we get to a new, slightly better place. Yeah? So during the period of disruption there, yeah, the previous world looked better. I understood it better. I was more comfortable. I knew my comfort zone. All these new things, not really sure. I might be really excited. I love this agile thing. I cannot deliver anything, but I love this agile thing. Yeah? You can see teams are very, very motivated going agile, but they cannot deliver. Why? Because they are learning. Yeah? So that period of disruption is a very vulnerable period for people, for the team, to the organizations. We can feel very discomforted, or, with a lot of discomfort. How do you think the business patience or tolerance to that worst performance is compared to the time it takes to get better, to see the results? Longer? Same? Shorter? Typically it's a lot shorter. Yeah? We don't give ourselves enough time to go through that depth and start getting the results. So people start getting itchy and easy there. And this is what people say, perhaps say, Agile did not work for us. It's not that it couldn't have worked for you. It's that sometimes either we tried to do too much in one go, or we didn't give it enough time, or we didn't support it. So we go somewhere down here and we say, the whole management team has left, or the person that was trying to do this leave, and we say, we're going to go back to what we used before. We were good at that. What's happening now? If we are here and we try to go back to the previous world. Yeah, that is our current state. We're going to have another one before we go to the new desired state, which is the past. And then we're going to run out of patience again. And someone said, we should try Agile again. Maybe it was not that bad. What's going to happen again? Another one. And you can see this organization sometimes going just downward trend. Yeah? And just fed up of change and saturated with change. One of the things about change is that they say that 80%, take it with a pinch of salt, because I don't think I can find a reference anywhere. But that's perhaps a myth, but a lot of many change programs fail. Yeah? And many times it's because we don't run change programs correctly, and we don't have the patience to wait for that change program to succeed as well. We run out of patience. All right? One of the typical mistakes that happens in Agile is that we get really excited about the things that are easy to change, the visible stuff. We go and say, hey, that's the new organizational chart, and you have a new role. You're no longer a BA. You're now a product owner. Yeah? And you're not going to be whatever role you had today. You're going to be Scrum Master. Yeah? Yeah? And we have this new process called Scrum. Yeah? And we're going to do all these we're going to do all these rituals every day. Just do them. They work. Stand up every day. Standing up just give us the results, obviously. Yeah? And we have all these tools, like we're going to buy a tool. Yeah? But what did we say? We said that it was individuals and interactions rather than over processes and tools. Yet, the first thing we do is we pick a method, like a Scrum, or Kanban, whatever it is, and then we also pick the tools. We go and buy Jira. Rather than talk about the invisible part, which is the really difficult thing to move. The behaviors, the language we use, the tool, the taboos, our beliefs, the values. Yeah? These are the things that collectively give us our culture. Yeah? And what many times do in organizations is we change the easy part and we leave this behind. So we end up have organizations that they are agile in name, but not agile in practice. Not agile in mindset. Yeah? I've seen stand-ups where, yes, people are doing 15 minutes every day. They are more or less together. They might not have a board to talk about, but they follow the 3 questions, and they're actually getting no value of it, but they're doing it. So the mechanics are right, but there's no value. And many times because we don't explain why we should be doing things. We don't talk about the difficult stuff. It's all right. Talk about the organizational iceberg. If we take that to the cultural aspects of our organization, this is from a guy called William Schneider, and the picture is by someone called Michael Sahota in the Agile world. And talking about culture, Schneider defined culture as how do we do things here to succeed? Yeah? And organizations will have a dominant culture and perhaps pockets of other cultures, but always helping the dominant one. Yeah? And culture, here we define it by the 2 axes. In the vertical one is whether we are reality-oriented or whether we talk about the possibilities. And whether we are more in the horizontal is whether we are company-oriented or we are people-oriented. So if we are reality-oriented and company-oriented, we call that the control culture. And that is, we define that as we succeed by getting and keeping control. Yeah? So things that we will see in the organization is things like power, predictability, lots of processes, standards, hierarchies, stability, all those sorts of things. Yeah? That's the control culture. A collaboration culture, which is, again, reality, but now about people, we talk about we succeed by working together. That's how we succeed here. So things that we have here is like teams, people, trust, diversity, egalitarian, collective collaboration, collective decision-making, things like that, partnerships. Okay? Cultivation, which is people and possibility, it's we succeed by growing people and growing people who fulfill our vision. Okay? So the things that you will hear there is purpose, faith, I cannot read this here, evolution, growth, vision, that sort of thing. Final one, possibility and company-oriented, is about, we call that the competence culture. And we say that we succeed by being the best. So we have things about professionalism, craftsmanship, creativity, yes, expertise, being the best, achievement, maybe being the best as well. All right? So when you look at those cultures, and you think about Agile, what we just mentioned about Agile, which cultures do you think will be more aligned to the Agile manifesto? Or where do you think the Agile manifesto will align itself? Which culture of cultures? Collaboration here? Any other one? Just collaboration? Cultivation.
People side.
Yeah? So it's very much that left side. Yeah? The first thing it talks about is individuals and interactions. We talk a lot on this left side. We will talk about excellence as well. So there is an element in here. And Agile teams will have discipline and control, and they want to be in control of their past, present, and future. So there is a little bit of that. But it's mostly here. If you think about your organizations, especially if you're in a traditional organization, which culture do you think will be dominant in your organization? Control? Yeah? So when we talk about introducing agility to an organization, assuming that this hypothesis is correct, what we're talking about sometimes is moving an organization, an individual, a team, a department, or an organization from a more controlled environment towards a more people-oriented environment. Yeah? That is really hard. And the bigger if it's an individual, it takes time. If it's a team, we will talk about maybe a team to become agile, 6 months. Yeah? Department, could be a year or 2. Organizations, could be longer. Will be longer. Depends how big the organization. Yeah? So the challenge, when we talk about this journey towards agility, is moving the organization a little somewhere in the right direction. And we are assuming that going from somewhere here in that direction is a good thing. It might not be in your case. Some organizations might need to move from here to there. Some organizations might have to move from there to there. Yeah? There is no right or wrong. Each one of those cultural domains could be valuable and the right one for the organization. But most of the time when we're talking about Agile, we're talking about organizations that are in control, and we're saying that we now value that a little bit more. Yeah? Is that okay? Okay. So, when we're trying to introduce Agile, if we are in an organization that values the control and all these different things and the power, and we have all these things with their own managers trying to control the future and things like that, how do we introduce Agile? Will be many times, one, by not talking about it, talk about improvement, but the other one is to try to say wherever Agile starts, the ideal will be that you can change the whole organization. Yeah? You can create a slice through the organization. But if it starts somewhere where we started before, it's about how can we influence our direct areas of interface? How can we make them believe in what we're trying to do? How do we make them look better? Because I'm not doing Agile for the sake of doing Agile. I'm trying to do Agile to improve the organization. So if I think that I can help a person there or a person there, understand them, understand their needs, and try to help them through agility. That's the way other people will come into become Agile or believe into it. That's how we engender the trust and the collaboration. So many times it's not about trying to become really Agile very quickly. It's about influencing one step at a time. Yeah? Some organizations will talk about putting the brakes on Agile. And it's like, rather than keep going deeper and deeper in the areas that you already converted, yeah, can we also concentrate in making it wider and wider? Yeah? Can you start helping getting someone in the finance, HR, procurement to give you a try, to give you a benefit of the doubt, and give it a go? Things like that. Okay? Any questions or thoughts about that? Stand silence. Okay, good. You believe me? Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about in this thing about change is that rather than trying to do a big change, we might try to do a small set of changes, regular changes. So we say, we are here. What are the bigger problems that we have today? Oh, we know this, and that, the biggest pain points. Can we fix those? Good. Yeah? And it might be by introducing some elements of Agile, some practices, or some different language, whatever it is. Did it work? Yeah, okay. Can we try the next one? Did it work? Yeah? So we're going through all these small J's, but they are small, they are regular, they are more easier to absorb. Yeah? And what we're effectively creating is a culture of continuous improvement, evolutionary change. Yeah? So that's what, in Kanban, for example, we have a preference towards evolutionary change. A regular set of changes that are non-frictional, not difficult. I mean, they might be challenging, but they're just happening at small steps so we can absorb them. Yeah? Have you heard about Kaizen? That's what Kaizen does. Yeah? Cool? Okay? And I love that picture of our Kanban Kebara. Okay. So, an approach to change could be, these are the principles of Kanban. We say, start with what we do now, understand where we are today, and start from there. If your business is not about to collapse, you are okay. You have been successful. If your business is not about to collapse, then agree to pursue evolutionary change. Can we start improving? Can we get better at what we do? Yeah? The answer may be Agile or not. Can we get better? Yeah? Initially, respect all the roles. We don't have to create new job titles just because we are trying to become Agile or not. You know, if we are BAs and we are very good at being BAs, or PMs and we are very good at PMs, let's start with where we are. And if, as time goes by, the evolution tells us that maybe there is a new role emerging, then we think about the new role. But we don't go and say, from tomorrow you're something else. Good luck. Which is what happens many times. So we respect the current roles, the responsibilities, and things like that, okay? And the last one is, because we're trying to do evolutionary change, we encourage acts of leadership at all levels. So we're basically talking about the collective journey. What can each one of us do to start doing things better. Yeah? What's the most difficult thing to change in any organization? Anyone? This is a tricky question.
Culture.
Culture, okay. Very difficult to change culture, yes. What's the most difficult thing? People? Perceptions, yeah. Those are all right, yeah. But the most difficult thing to change, usually, sometimes people, you get started in a rank, is the management that does this, and is this, and that. The most difficult thing to change in an organization is me. Because I'm right. Of course I'm right. The rest of you, wrong. Yeah? And we see that many times in business. How could they be wrong? I'm right. It's the others, yeah? We try to encourage acts of leadership at all levels, and change starts from within. Yeah? If I want management to be different, can I be the example that I wish other people to see treating me as? If there are some practices that we like to introduce, can I try to start introducing them? Yeah? If I want to be a better programmer, and people keep talking about this pair programming thing, yeah? Becoming an expert in pair programming will take a long time, but could I try maybe half an hour every day with one, volunteer friend in the team, yeah, and practice and get better at it? Can I try to change the way I do reporting? Can I change the way I communicate this and that? It starts from us. Each one of us can start becoming the sort of like the role models that we're hoping others to be as well. And that's a big challenge for a lot of us. But actually, we need to stop and think about those things. And if we are fully utilized, sometimes we cannot even think about these things. Okay? I love this sentence from Bob Marshall. It's talking about, above all, attend to the people's needs. It's people who will make us succeed. It's people we work with. So an element of empathy, an element of understanding, an element of, trying to build humane organizations where we have, life entities there working rather than chips. We are people there working with us. Cool. And in terms of essential enablers for agility, I will say that then is, provided that we have the time, it's about an evolution rather than a revolution. If your business is about to collapse, you might have to do a revolution, big change, because otherwise the company could die. Yeah? But most of the time, we try to do evolution, no revolution. It's about people and culture, all these interactions and relationships. It's about trying to make it a collective journey for all of us. And sometimes regularly we need an element of experience coaching. Because if we're trying to just discover blindly, that can be a challenge. So maybe having someone in your organization that is a few steps ahead of you and can save us from the biggest mistakes, that can be really good. And that's me. Thank you. The slides are live on SlideShare already, on that link at the top. You want to be in contact. Any questions, any thoughts? Anyone wants more food? Maybe still there.
So I need to have a look on the website for future events, but so for me, a lot of this is the what's, and I'm really interested in the hows, because building systems is a series of dots, and
yes.
Ultimately there's a common sense to it. And so my question about documentation is, well, there's loads of different ways or templates that you can use, wiki, etc., etc., etc. But what's the most efficient? What's the minimum? So it's all about, is there any, what events are coming up that would address the hows?
At the moment, in terms of the events from us, we have one which is going to cover about helping or talking about some ideas about running Kanban in the PMO.
Yeah.
From the PMI perspective, any others?
We have a workshop in the team. Maybe.
Yeah, I think, it's good to hear this feedback, and I think what we'll try to do, there will be like 2 parts in the event in December. We'll try to focus on these more practical aspects, and we've got some time before that event, so we'll come back. If we just exchange the contacts, we'll come back to the rest of the group for how we can help with the practical aspect of that.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to get that in this forum, because I imagine it would take longer.
No, it depends.
Idea
For
is
example, last week here at BCS, our SG, we ran what we call a playful PA session. I don't know, anybody attended that? So that was, in some ways, is a few practical
Yeah.
things that we can look at. We will run things like innovation games training. Now, there are some standard sessions that we might not run because there is lots of people offering them, and it will be perhaps the standard training. So if you're interested in things like Scrum, Product Owner, there is lots of companies offering training for that. So we might not enter the very detailed ones because it's out there. However, if we get feedback that says we would like to do a back to basics session, we could easily organize back to basics session. So we could run Agile requirements, we could run Agile team leadership, Agile projects.
Yeah,
give us the feedback, please.
We did about a year ago, we kind of took a snapshot at what the situation, the whole like Agile rollouts and the Agile culture and the experience of Agile look like across quite a few companies. And what we're trying to do in this December events is understand what changed, which practical aspect actually changed, where there are gaps, because the forum, the community we're creating is not just to kind of share some thoughts, share some experience, but actually learn from each other. And we'd like to focus on what is more important for you and others. So this sort of workshops and presentations become more practical, more useful for you. It's like, you know, the retrospectives. We listen to each other. Okay, what worked, what didn't? Where do we have massive gaps? What is still not working? Let's focus on that. Instead of saying, oh, here's Scrum. Yeah, everyone knows about Scrum. Let's talk a bit more about Scrum. What's the point? Let's focus on what is important for the community. So it's important for you. I suspect it's important for others as well.
But
just let's get in touch and
give us the feedback, because
exactly.
It will help us to plan who do we engage with and what next sessions will come. So we try to cover an element of like more. We try to cover sessions that go from basics to intermediate to advanced over a range of things. So give us the feedback, and we'll try to always find the matching ones. There was a question there.
Basically, can you give your views on challenges that people face in an Agile project, FP over TNM? I feel that Agile is more suitable for TNM kind of work, time and material.
What kind of work?
Time and material instead of a fixed price.
It may or may not be, because I mean, I could go into a long answer. We're doing a lot of like time boxing, especially in things like Scrum. Scrum is built around the concept of sprints, time boxing. Time boxing fixes the time and the cost. So that's an element of fixed price. Yeah? And what we negotiate on is on the scope. So that works. If you have a T&M, it could equally work by understanding the contractual element that you have, and then building your practice, building your solution to meet that. Yeah? There are pros and cons of all of them. Sometimes the important thing is actually to break away from the on time, on cost, on scope mindset. Yeah? When we think about doing things on time, the typical result is that we pad our estimates. 4 months, maybe do 6 just in case. Yeah? When we think about cost, we build contingency in the cost. And when we think about scope, we ask for everything. And we become risk averse as well. Yeah? So time, cost, and scope are actually quite detrimental. They create a lot of inefficiencies. Yeah? Are you familiar with Parkinson's law? Let me see if I can remember exactly how it is. If you have time expands effort expands or activities expand to fill the time given to it. So if we thought that it was 4 months and we say 6 months, it will take 6 months. If we initially thought that it was 4. Yeah? So there are things like about trying to be on time, on cost, and on scope that create very, very negative, or, it has ramifications. We might change that into trying to deliver maximum value, trying to deliver as quickly as possible by being more efficient, removing waste and things like that, and trying to deliver with the right quality. Yeah? So we can try to turn those very standard mindsets of time, cost, and scope into something which is more adapted to knowledge work, to the kind of work that we do. I don't know if I answer the question, but more, yeah?
One of the challenges that I've faced is when there is a transition between vendors,
Yes.
and if there is agile being followed in the organization, and where there is very less documentation,
Yeah.
you have scenarios where the vendor who's going out provides minimal documentation, which is not really useful for the vendor coming in to take over and take up the work.
Yeah.
Move at the same pace as the previous vendor was moving.
Yeah. So you're talking about two vendors, one maybe more agile or less agile, but effectively they are not, essentially, I think the way you describe that is one vendor not giving the right documentation to the other one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Essentially, if vendor X is transitioning to vendor Y,
Yes.
they have lost the competitive bid after working for 1 year.
Yeah.
They've lost the competitive bid for the next year.
Yes.
So when they're doing the transition handover,
Yes.
because of this reduced documentation,
Yes.
focus on actually doing things on the ground. Because of this reduced documentation, I see that there are many instances where the vendor who's going out
Yeah.
does not give any kind of documentation, and there's a lot of knowledge lost
Yeah.
in the process.
You have a lot. You have that's a very special case of transitions between. I mean, one vendor that lost a contract and the next one that comes to pick the contract. Probably they're not going to have very good relationship, one or the other. They are, yeah. But the thing is that the hypothesis that we have there is that if we had documented this properly, we will have better handover. It's a hypothesis. The new vendor has to absorb all the knowledge. Reading documentations may not have the knowledge. A lot of the knowledge is going to still be in the heads of a lot of people. And documenting is not going to, documenting in a very in a massive way may not give you that. Yeah? Now you're going to do a handover. There is things like system, team liquidity, people liquidity concepts. Yeah? Where what you're trying to do is pair people in. When you're doing the handover, force contractually to people to pair. So the people that has the knowledge is teaching, mentoring the people that don't have the knowledge. Yeah? So do a real knowledge transfer. Don't do knowledge transfer through documentation. We do knowledge transfer through doing. Yeah? And have someone that can help you minimize the problems of learning. Yeah? So things like team liquidity and other things like that is how you handle the transition. Documentation doesn't have to be the answer. Actually, I think probably it's not the answer most of the time. If you can get a contract where you can create that relationship somehow, force it. Okay? But it's a great question, great example. Any other question? We want to go home. Okay, no, thank you very much for coming. As I say, it was the third joint event. Miriam wants to do a talk about...
No, just briefly.
Yes, no, just something about your PDUs and things like that for PMI. Our next joint event is on the 1st of December, and we're going to be talking about how Kanban can help in a PMO environment. So you're running projects, or you're involved in an agile project, in a project management environment, how Kanban could help us as well. But now, Miriam.
Quickly, promise. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Just very briefly, thank you, Jose. Thank you, BCS, for continuing supporting these joint events. As you said, we've got the next event on the 1st of December for the PMI UK chapter is already advertised on the website, so feel free to just go in and register. We also have a workshop on the 10th of December, and that I think is in terms of Reuters. PDUs for PMI members, it will be sent out hopefully tomorrow or later on this week. Also, as soon as we've got the recording, it will be shared. And then finally, if you guys want to talk of anything, you want to propose workshops or you would like to sort of address a specific issue that is concerning you, just talk to us, because the idea is to share what we know and what we don't know. And there are no answers to everything, but it's very important for the community that we work together. That collaboration piece is what will help us hopefully succeed at some point in our businesses.
Together we're better.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, thank you very much, guys, and hopefully I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
To me personally, any feedback, any follow-up, if you have any questions or anything, you got my contact details. I'll love to hear from you. Thank you very much for coming.